Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, not necessarily at the state entry, but the point being that you would be kicking it off sometime before you actually needed the animation, and then would presumably be a faster process then to start playing it back. Um, yeah. Okay. Well, LL preload sound makes sense. My guess would be that it wouldn't be particularly hard to extend to other types of assets. I see there's a linked bug 7854 for preload asset for arbitrary assets. Don't know if there's any feedback on that. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Let me take a look at that. It's probably I can see there definitely be cases where that would be useful. It may or may not fit within the framework of the animated object stuff, but we'll take a look at it. Let's see. I have a question. Is animating rigged mesh going to use the current bento skeleton? Yes, it's based on the same skeleton as avatars are, so that you have the same range of joints available. It doesn't do everything that avatars do currently, but it does include the full set of joints. Yeah, syncing animations obviously has been a problem all along. You get this, you got a bunch of different avatars that are trying to play the same animation, and then they all start as soon as the animation shows up, and you get this like sort of unplanned line dance effect, and it's kind of squirrely. Yeah, Lex, don't know what the dispo is going to be on preloading animations. I'll take a look at it. It's not something that's obviously part of the project, but if it's useful to enough people and it's not a huge deal to do it, we might look into it. All right. I am trying to look at this Giazo link, and I'm getting kind of seasick. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be looking for there. Oh, is this the problem with the imposter box being too small and so stuff gets cut off? Yeah, okay. I know I've seen a Jira for that, but I'm not sure what happened to it. Kind of think somebody was working on it. Yeah, anyway, I'll take a look. All right, I'm just scrolling back up now if I've missed anybody else. I had a question about returning mesh asset swap LSL function. I'm not sure I understand the question there. Vincent asked this. Oh yeah, that was a problem in the early days of Mesh, and I don't think we would want to revisit that particular can of worms. Let's see. I had a question about where animation assets for NPCs need to be stored to be able to be played. Yeah, the way this works right now is similar to uh, the way it works now for mesh attachments, right? You can put an animation object inside your attachment, uh, inside your attachments, and then reference them inside your scripts. And so that's the approach we've been using with the animated objects as well. So you can put animations inside of your animated objects, and then reference them by name in the scripts that are in those objects. Could the object use an AO? Well, I mean, the original idea with an AO is that you're overriding the default animations, right? You've got the built-in walk or stand or whatever, and you're trying to replace those. In the case of the objects, they don't play any animations by default. They only play the ones that you asked for. So, I mean, you can have a script that tells it what animations to play, but it wouldn't exactly be an AO in that sense.
Oh, but there is the pathfinding system. So, in the pathfinding system, if you look at the code and you have similar functions to how an AO would work in a way.
Yeah, I haven't really worked with the pathfinding system. How do you see that going?
Well, there are different, things that trigger an event. So, you can have something trigger just wandering, just walking around, or following something. You could trigger it to follow something. And all of these things would be, of course, linked to animation. So, in many ways, it would be a lot like an AO.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of an AO as kind of an object that's in charge of controlling animations, then um, you can certainly have those. It's just it would I think it would work a bit differently than what it is with the avatars today.
And I'll just point out to everybody that we didn't have an AO in Second Life either. It was made by somebody. We didn't even have AO functions until a couple years ago. So, of course, what will likely happen here is somebody will make one.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the intent here is that the initial support for animated objects is just the first stage, and once that's out and working, we would be looking into adding more kind of NPC-like functionality, and that's where you get into things like allowing these things to have a locomotion graph the way that avatars do, to have their state actually tracked on the server side. Once you have that, then the idea of an AO is actually kind of directly comparable. Um, And that's also the stage that we would look at things like support for baking and support for uh, kind of wearable inventory, that sort of thing. Some of that wouldn't really make sense until we had bakes on mesh, because of course these are mesh objects. But the intent there is that we would be looking at kind of a follow-on project once we do kind of the simplest thing that works for just allowing you to animate objects initially. Yeah, and of course we have to add an LSL interface to Skynet as well.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up that. Well, I don't know how to put this without offending people, but years ago, I'll say it like this. Years ago, when Pathfinding was first put out, there was all this code that was written by Linden Lab or by one of your employees, and it was a really nice code. I took it was like code to handle like 3 or 4 different moving objects at the same time, almost like a herd of people.
This was LSL stuff?
Right, exactly. And my point is that this was like such beautiful code, and obviously it was code to test out the pathfinding and everything like that. And I thought to myself when I was reading through the code that, I'm going to come back to this when I want to work on pathfinding stuff. And eventually I did come back to it, but I never found the code again. It was almost like it was white. But my point is, though, that Linden Lab makes all these features and everything. And in the process, we do have to test things. And it would be nice, instead of having to wait for someone in the open market to create some code for it, if Linden Lab would spend a little bit of time in development of writing some finished code for us in these related things that we're working on.
Yeah, I mean it's a good point. We've certainly had this come up in various projects where, something is out there and it kind of works, but you don't have a lot of good examples to kind of get you started with it. Honestly, we've had more incidents than I would like of stuff just disappearing from our wiki because of, people don't realize that the links need to be kept live or whatever. So it's, it can be a problem, and I think a lot of it's just kind of a resource problem. We don't have as many people working on that kind of thing as would probably be ideal, but it's about all I can say about that is that we'll look for opportunities to try to put out example stuff as we can. But I agree with you. We don't always have the greatest set of kind of starter information.
Well, and that's, I didn't want to step on coders' toes, but anytime you're developing something, the guy who's actually got his hands on it and writing code for it and designing it in the first place kind of knows how it could or can work. So it is nice to get some really good example code of some complex stuff. We have lots of simple little scripts, but nothing really all that complex. And it would be nice to get to see some of that complex code coming from the lab that we could all use. A great example too is like the ZHAO. We talk about it all the time because everyone uses it, and that was something that was made open source by somebody and just given to the community. Well, at the lab, when you guys write code, it's all open source for us, and that allows for us to just freely spread it. And if we had some really nice code, then the coders in Second Life could take that code and do crazy stuff with it.
Yeah. No, I think Lex raises a valid point though, which is that often the people who are developing this stuff on the Linden side aren't the kind of experts on what the end users or the content creators really want, and so we can't necessarily write the definitive LSL AO or whatever because we don't necessarily know all the things that people are going to want to do. A lot of that stuff kind of gets evolved by the community. Once people get in there and start poking at it, they say, oh well, it needs this and that and the other thing. So to the extent that we can help give people pointers to how stuff is intended to be used or to give good examples. I think it's great if we can do that, but um, I think often it really is kind of a collaborative activity. And I mean, even with Bento, we didn't really know all of the things that we were going to need to be able to do with that project until we started working with the content creators during the development process, and a lot of what we wound up doing really came out of those requests. So again, we can't necessarily kind of create this sort of perfect, fully formed vision and then just kind of hand it off and say here it is. It's really a much more kind of collaborative process than that.
Well, I can definitely understand what you're saying, uh, but definitely something to think about. And I've also even thought about it. Linden Lab wants us to create experiences, and this is the not easy thing to do. But at the same time, Linden Lab has developed a few games. Well, the question I would ask is why aren't all the code and everything for these games open source and available to everybody? And we should have, 1,000 different versions of whatever game that Linden Lab puts out or tests out or whatever.
Yeah, you open source those games and people start cheating.
What you're going to say, especially with something like Linden Realms, where people
Yeah.
can end up getting, actually getting money out of it.
Yeah.
There's already probably problems with people figuring out ways to search for where the gems are and just autopath so that they can bugger off and watch TV while their avatar's just running around doing everything.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the trade-offs there. Certainly ideally we'd like to have more open source stuff out there, but there are cases where that does increase the potential for abuse. That said, I wasn't involved in the Linden Realms or the other experience developments, so I can't say exactly what the motivation was for the fact that that's not currently open source.
Well, the reason why I kind of bring this up too is like the way I look at a lot of these worlds, Second Life, Hi-Fi, others, they're very code intense. So if you're not a coder, it's somewhat useless to try and make something complex. And that's where the bottleneck is. Like we have hundreds, thousands of Photoshop experts, lots of mesh experts too, and other things. But where is the bottleneck? The bottleneck is in the coding.
There's plenty of good coders out
There are good coders, but
LSL is also really simple and dead easy to learn for anyone if they've never coded anything.
Yeah.
yes, to do simple stuff it is very easy. But to do something complex like a game or anything like that, I mean, the lab
It would
they
take that long to learn how to do that stuff though, and it is quite well documented. And there are
Yeah, it
really
is very
good,
well documented.
these scripts groups are really helpful as well.
well
We wouldn't want coders are content creators too. They're not, you don't want to just have everybody have the same kind of meshes.
Yeah, but that wouldn't happen. Okay, so Linden Lab would put out a mesh or anything else, and what would we do with it? We would do all kinds of crazy things with it. It would know, you're not putting coders out of business because Linden Lab wrote some code. We take that code and do something crazy with it, and that's my point.
If they were open sourcing all the code for an entire game, maybe having sort of if they put out snapshots of this is one way to do this type of thing, or you can get this to interact with that this way, that kind of thing would be good because that would be useful for pretty much everyone.
Well, think about like the base games. There are only so many different types of games. There's basically 3 or 4 major genres of game types. So if Linden Lab just wrote some basic code for those, and then the whole community would take those and make their own experiences out of them. That's why, I know Linden Lab wants to push the experiences, but I don't see that happening very much, and I think I kind of understand why. It's not that easy.
Well, the experience is really not hard to use. It's just not a lot in it at the moment that you use. I mean, besides the database and the teleporting avatars, animating.
Yeah, well, so, clearly it would be better if there's more, shared open source code. But on the other hand, we clearly have resource constraints on the Linden side as well. We have coders, but they're doing a lot of other stuff. They're not spending most of their time trying to write, nice, easy to understand LSL for people. And I don't see realistically, I don't see that there's that's likely to change in the near future. Maybe I should throw out the idea that what we really need is some kind of a shared venue where it's easy for anyone to share code, not just Linden Lab, but anybody who wants to participate. Does that make sense? Do you think if something like that existed, it would be useful?
Well, there is a script library on the wiki.
Yeah, there are some examples in the wiki.
As well as
I'm not sure if the wiki qualifies as super easy to use, but it's there, and it does have quite a lot of stuff.
I was going to say pretty much everything you need to make pretty much any game purely within LSL is already on the wiki. But if you're thinking of sort of like a similar thing to sort of this little meeting thing, but for coders, might be worth getting hold of the Caledon Oxbridge group and seeing if they put something on their schedule and advertise through their group. Because I know they do a lot of sort of tutorials for people.
Well, I use other engines too. So, and on Unity, that's one of the great things on Unity is you can just buy a prepackaged game, throw it into your Unity, engine, and throw in some different assets, swap out some assets, and you have a brand new game. Second Life is, 12, 13 years old now, 14 years old, and we don't have that.
Well, it is a lot harder.
Doing that kind of thing in Second Life would be phenomenally harder than doing it in
you've got
doing it
so many
in
different
Unity.
objects that would need to have scripts and do it this way.
Plus the fact that Unity is a dedicated build a game here engine rather than a do whatever the hell you want kind of engine. It's not trying to cope with absolutely everything everyone's doing all at once. So there are kind of limitations to what you can do within Second Life as far as that goes. Although maybe some kind of external tool that would be usable, like a land editor, to do it, might be doable.
Unity's not limited to 64K.
Yeah, well, the size of scripts is definitely an issue if you're trying to do something very complicated.
Ever a chance of getting that raised?
I don't know. I mean, we have raised various other limits in the past, but don't know what the prospects would be for scripts in particular.
Well, it's just some thoughts I had when I think about like getting more people into Second Life, it's about having stuff for them to do and more games and more things that they're familiar with. I mean, that's what I'm thinking about. How do we get more games? How do we get more things for people to do?
It definitely would be nice to have more things to actually do, because it would it would bridge that gap between MMO and virtual world, where you have so many options but no guidance. It would kind of give you that little bit of guidance here and there that would sort of increase the chances of people likely to come in, have fun, and stick around.
And I think NPCs or animated meshes is a step in the right direction for that too.
Oh yeah, animated meshes, if you can do NPCs, that'll be awesome. Quite a lot of fun things to do with that.
All right, had a lot of discussion going here. If I missed anybody's question, you may want to repeat it. Yeah. No, I don't know when we'll have Project Viewer out. Right now I'm still at the stage of we're poking around in corners of the code that nobody's tried to do anything with for a while, and so sometimes you try to change something and it works fine, and sometimes you find some weird surprise that you have to deal with. So when you're in that mode, it's very hard to predict how long it's going to take to get beyond it. So far I think things have gone reasonably smoothly, but there's a fair number of kind of corners that we haven't poked in yet. So, all I can say is, once we feel like we have something that's useful and sufficiently stable, we'll look to put a project viewer out.
Hey guys, you mind if I butt in here? I don't create items in Second Life, I just design sims. But the reason they won't implement more games and more things for people to do is because LSL is based on really old coding. And it doesn't utilize your PC to its full extension. Whereas like other games that are similar years old, let's say World of Warcraft, Lord of the Rings, and things like that, they've been upgraded to use multi-core CPUs and also to use your GPUs a lot more better. They're better at extending the hardware and using the hardware, whereas LSL is still mostly CPU based. So no matter how good of a graphics card you have, how powerful it is, how much system RAM you have, if LSL is only using one CPU core and maximum up to two, even if you have an 8-core CPU, it's going to limit what you can do in here. And it's going to limit the experiences you can give to the end user that uses the program. Now, as far as other games, CSGO and things like that, which I have designed for and scripted for, yeah, it is server-side. But the way it's implemented, the way it uses the net framework for Windows is very, very outdated.
Yeah, LSL isn't running on your computer though. It's running on
Exactly.
London Lab computer.
Exactly, but the way they implemented the coding to use multiple cores is very ancient. It's still running off old coding that was meant for dual core processors and things like that. It's not meant for the newers.
Well, it is mono.
Yeah, it is, and they could update it. Instead of working on a new system, which I think is going to completely fail, they need to upgrade this one. That way it can keep the player base, because if it keeps going the way it's going, people are going to eventually leave. Hardware's getting better, but Second Life incrementally is getting a little bit better, but not at the pace it should be going. And they make millions a year. They're not broke. It's not that they don't have the money. No, I'm talking about Second Life itself. They could make it a lot better experience. Upgrade the servers to more common hardware that's used these days for MMOs and things like that. They could. They have millions stockpiled. How do you think they stuck 14 million in the new Project Viewer and Sanzar? They're not broke. Exactly. Well, you can't. All right. Well, let's say you go to an office and they give you 5 wrenches to fix a car, and you're missing the metric system wrenches. No matter how many times you pull with that 7/8, you're not going to fix it. You got to have the right tools. And as far as us making SL better, they have to upgrade it and implement some more modern technology into it. Exactly. That's what I'm saying. You can only do so much with the tools they give you.
Yeah, well, we're trying to improve what we can. I can promise you from experience that everybody at the company is busy, and we're not just lying around rolling in enormous piles of money. But
No, I know
obviously, beyond that, there's always going to be questions about priorities, and we have a very impassioned community that has a lot of different perspectives on that.
I still don't think anyone's actually kind of maxed out the sort of activity game potential of what SL can handle anyway, really. At least not that I've found.
Well, I mean, it would be nice to be able to do like a real MMO experience, like build like a little mini sim with like whole RPG built inside of it, that you don't have to wait 10 seconds for whatever object you're interacting with to reply to you.
Well, there are.
It'd be nice.
There are things like that.
I make one of those things, so we're on dozens of sims.
Yeah, there's one that guy I know was working on.
Yeah, that's what I'm speaking about, performance. It'd be a lot better, if it could handle a lot more. There's also things that people who make objects can take into account. Like the other day, I went and bought a brand new mesh house. They had a damn coffee cup with a 1024 texture on it. I'm like, why on a coffee cup? Could simply put a 512. Nobody's going to zoom that close on a coffee cup.
The reason everybody puts 1024 textures on everything is because we don't allow them to put 2048 textures on everything.
Yeah.
That is hilarious.
I had a question, if you could follow up for me. I know you mentioned at the beginning that to keep the content protection talk in the support framework, I was just wondering, was that, were you referring to even the no copy transfer loophole that's in all the viewers, or is that just in the CopyBot? Were you just talking about the CopyBot side?
I mean, really, I was referring to the kind of policy discussions we were having last week about how these kinds of things are enforced, and that's completely a support side thing. If there's if there's bugs that are getting exploited that we're not aware of, or that sort of thing, then yeah, definitely let us know. It's always good to have Jiras for that sort of thing.
I mean, as far as I know, that bug has been going on for over a year. The no copy marketplace. I don't know if it has a name. Right. I mean, I don't want to go into too much explanation of it. I can try to find it.
Yeah, I mean, if there's issues that we don't that we're not already aware of, that we don't have Jiras for, if it's something that's that's confidential, you can that you wouldn't want to put in a public facing Jira, then you can certainly drop us a line about that. You can just PM me or whatever.
Well, I mean,
But
in SL,
of
you don't
course,
even have to use copybot to rip objects or scripts. With the way they listed, the way sound channels and script channels are listed in the LSL, you can write scripts to listen for scripts, and you can listen for whenever objects are being sent textures, and you can snag the texture UUID and use it on whatever you want. They left things way too insecure, especially the voice servers, which you can just ping somebody's MAC address automatically.
yeah, I'm just
No, copybots can't steal scripts, but you can steal scripts with something else. I guarantee you. I mean, it's really bad. Anything in this game can be stolen because the way they designed it, the way they designed the way things interact, the way they talk on specific channels. It's really easy. I'm not going to say how to do it because I personally don't do it, but I've showed people on my own objects I built that I can steal anything I want from myself. Even when they're locked with no mod, no copy. You can jack it. It's not detectable. Anything above the listening channel 300 is really hard to digest for listener scripts to listen for when people are jacking your ship. Anything above 300. If you're going to steal something, do it on a channel above 300. Damn near impossible for anybody to see it.
Well, you can't steal scripts on channels. That's just their message.
No, but you can make your scripts work on those channels. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, channels are a factor for listening between two objects. The way you detect with somebody whenever they're copybotting your objects, if you're not on your sim, you have a prim on your sim that listens for specific coding that goes on between scripts when they talk. And it listens. And the reason I know is because I'm friends with somebody who designs other viewers that are used to crash sims because he's an MC. And he sent me a folder one time with all the exploits as of working 2017. And he's like, looky. And I was like, bro, why are you sending me this? I don't want this. I enjoy SL the way it is. He's like, well, in case anybody ever bothers you. So, I mean, you can, on the encryption side of SL, it's very wide open. And it's very easy to exploit.
all right. Well, as I say, I would definitely encourage people to file Jiras. It's great if we know about this stuff. But other than that, I guess we are. Yeah.
And talked to a rep on the phone, and I even sent them a copy of the email. And they said, thanks for that, but right now we're not looking into making things more secure. We're more focused on the experience for the user. I sent them a whole copy of everything he sent me, all the scripts he runs, and everything, and Lyndon Labs basically told me to go screw yourself, and we're not interested. Lack of better words. Yes. I mean, maybe if I was a major, like, builder in SL or very well known, maybe they would pay attention.
All right. Well, we are at time for this week, so we should probably wrap it up. Yeah, I can't speak to the history of whatever interactions you've already had. I would say that we're definitely interested in Jira's about any of this stuff, and if it already exists, if you want to just PM me with a link, I'd be happy to take a look at it. All right. Well, have a good week, all, and we will see you. I think we have a meeting next week. Yeah. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks, all. Catch you later.
Thanks, Spear.
Well, it was nice meeting all of y'all. Matter of fact, I'll compile quite a few of the emails that I've been sent about things like that. And if one of y'all are like the main person who sets up these meetings, I can forward it to you.
The main person who sets up these meetings is here.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know. I saw y'all streaming and I came on.
Yeah, well,
Dak, definitely please come back. Definitely please come back and please,
Well, I will. The only reason I don't bring anything in SL is because I can't get it low enough polygon to bring in. And Jesus Christ, I make some awesome things in Blender, but I have no idea to make it super low poly. I tried and failed. This thing I built had 2 million faces, and SL was like, nope.